this is a really great day for Albertans. We have been working for some time on addressing the 9 bad laws, as I like to call them, that have been impacting our investment climate here. And I'm pleased that we've reached an agreement to substantially work on removing and revising those laws. I think what it's going to do, especially with the removal of the emissions cap on Alberta, as well as the removal of the net zero power regs, I think it's going to unleash an incredible amount of investment and allow us to work together on important nation building projects. So it's the first step, I think, of what will be a few more steps we have to take together. But I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister has heard our concerns and responded to them.
Today, Prime Minister Carney and Premier Danielle signed an agreement for a new oil pipeline to the West Coast. Let's talk about what this means for Alberta and Canada's economy. Right now, Alberta has a big problem. We sell almost all of our oil, 97%, to just one customer, the United States. When you have one buyer, you don't get the best price. Alberta oil often sells for $20 to $30 less per barrel than it should, simply because we have nowhere else to sell it. This new pipeline will carry 1 million barrels of oil per day to ships headed for Asia. That's about a quarter of all oil Canada produces. Countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea need more and more energy, and they're willing to pay better prices than we're getting now. More customers means better prices for Alberta oil. Here's something different about this pipeline. Private companies will pay for it, not taxpayers. Remember Trans Mountain? The government had to buy that pipeline when private investors backed out, and it cost us billions, more than expected. This time, the government is promising private money only. Will companies step up? That's the big question. To encourage them, Ottawa has agreed to exempt Alberta from certain federal climate rules, which makes the investment less risky. Indigenous communities will have the opportunity to own part of this pipeline. That's important because when Indigenous people have a financial stake, projects tend to move forward more smoothly and face fewer delays. There's one tricky part. Oil tankers are currently banned from parts of BC's northern coast. To make this pipeline work, that ban may need to change. That's going to be controversial. One more thing to consider. Other countries are already selling oil to Asia. The United States, Russia, and Middle East producers got there first. We're just playing catch up. The government wants companies to apply for approval by July 1st. That's only 7 months away. Very fast for such a major project. The bottom line is simple. If we sell our oil to more countries, we'll get better prices. But actually building this pipeline won't be easy. Today's announcement is just the beginning.
Alberta had 10 pretty bad years with some terrible laws that really dogpiled on our oil and gas industry, and quite frankly, looked to us like they were intended to shut in our major industry, which is not only vital to our economy, but to the economy of all of Canada. And with this agreement today, we see that the federal government under Mark Carney is prepared to take a different approach. And we're pleased to see that. The removal of the emissions cap on oil and gas, I think, will give additional confidence back to our energy sector so they can expand production. Ultimately, expanding production will make pipelines possible, as well as the elimination of the clean energy regulations applied to our electricity sector should result in reinvestment in natural gas energy production, which we hope will fuel an AI boom. So those are some pretty key elements to it, not to mention the commitment to work together on getting a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline to Asian markets and have a carve out on the tanker ban to make that happen, as well as developing additional infrastructure for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. I mean, I had a big list of things that I wanted to address, and most of them have been ticked off.
Danielle has been fighting with the federal government over what she calls 9 bad laws. Federal rules, she says, hurt Alberta's oil industry. The 2 biggest ones are rules forcing power plants to use cleaner energy by 2035 and a cap on how much pollution oil companies can produce. Today, Ottawa agreed to let Alberta off the hook for both of these rules. That's a huge win for the Premier. Think about what this means. the federal government just said that national rules can have exceptions for certain provinces. If Alberta can get out of federal climate rules, why can't Saskatchewan or other provinces ask for the same thing? This could change how our country works when it comes to who makes the rules, Ottawa or the provinces. For Prime Minister Carney, this deal is about showing he can work with conservative premiers like Danielle Smith. Western Canada has felt ignored by Ottawa for a long time, and Carney is trying to fix that relationship. He's saying he can support both jobs and the environment, though many people doubt that's possible. For Premier Smith, this is exactly what she promised voters: stand up to Ottawa and win. That's a powerful message in Alberta, where many people feel the federal government doesn't understand their province. The government is calling this pipeline a project of national interest. That's not just a fancy title. It means Ottawa can speed up approvals and potentially override objections from other provinces. British Columbia hasn't agreed to this deal. And given how many people in BC oppose pipelines, there will be big political fights ahead. The tanker ban issue is especially difficult. Right now, oil tankers are banned from parts of BC's coast to protect the ocean and shoreline. Many communities and Indigenous groups support that ban. Changing it will make a lot of people angry. The government knows this will be unpopular, but decided the economic benefits are worth the political cost. Indigenous ownership is part of this deal. Ottawa learned from Trans Mountain that when Indigenous communities oppose a pipeline, they can stop it or delay it for years. By offering ownership stake from the start, the government hopes Indigenous groups will support the project because they'll make money from it. But here's the problem. Not all Indigenous communities care about money more than protecting their land and water. Some will say no, regardless of the financial offer. Let's talk about those climate rules exceptions again. The Clean Energy Rule, we are supposed to help Canada reduce pollution from power plants. Alberta's energy comes mostly from natural gas, which creates pollution. Without federal rules, Alberta can keep using natural gas longer. The emissions cap was meant to make sure oil companies reduce their pollution. Without it, there's less pressure for companies to clean up their operations. These exemptions make it much harder for Canada to meet the promises we made to other countries about reducing pollution. The government will say we can use money from selling oil to invest in cleaner energy, but that's a tough argument. There's another big question. What if private companies want to build this pipeline? The agreement says Ottawa will help make it happen. But what does that mean? If companies don't step up, does the government have to pay for it with taxpayer money, like Trans Mountain? Neither Carney nor Smith have answered that question clearly. The July 1st deadline is meant to show they're serious and moving fast. But it usually takes years to plan a pipeline, doing environmental studies, talking to communities, designing the route. 7 months seems unrealistic. Environmental groups will likely challenge this in court, saying the government is rushing and not doing proper consultations. Today's deal is about political symbolism as much as actual policy. Carney gets to say he's working with the West. Smith gets to say she beat Ottawa. But the real battles with BC, with Indigenous groups, with environmentalists, and in the courts are just getting started.
Are you willing to approve a pipeline even if British Columbia or affected First Nations don't agree? Would you compensate them instead?
Just to be clear, this agreement today between Alberta and the Government of Canada, it's the first step. Several things have to happen before a pipeline is built, and one of those is a private sector proponent. Secondly, goes directly to your question, which is that there needs to be full partnership, including equity ownership, substantial economic benefits with First Nations in Alberta, First Nations in British Columbia, as well as agreement and substantial economic benefits for the people of British Columbia.
Alberta from these rules make it much harder for Canada to meet the promises we made to other countries about reducing pollution. Now, let's talk about BC's coast. Right now, large oil tankers are banned from the northern BC coast. Why? Because the area has incredible ocean life. Killer whales, salmon, herring, and many other species. People who live on that coast depend on clean water for fishing and their way of life. Do you remember the Exxon Valdez? In 1989, that oil tanker spilled millions of gallons of oil off the Alaska coast, just north of BC. The damage lasted for decades. The ban on tankers was put in place to make sure that that never happens again. This pipeline deal says that ban might need to change. You can imagine how people on the coast feel about that. Indigenous communities face difficult choices with this pipeline. The government is offering them ownership stakes, meaning they would own part of the pipeline and make money from it. For some communities, that money could pay for schools, healthcare, housing, and other important needs. That's a real benefit. Different indigenous groups will make different decisions. Some say this is an opportunity. Others will see it as a threat to everything they're trying to protect. The government seems to think that offering ownership will solve the problem. But it's not that simple. Here's a question nobody has answered. What happens when the pipeline needs to cross the territory of indigenous nations who say no? Does the government force it through? How does that fit with Canada's promises about respecting indigenous rights? If there's an oil spill on the coast, the damage could last for generations. Fish populations could collapse. The ocean ecosystem could be devastated. Communities that depend on the ocean for their livelihood could lose everything. The government says they will have safety measures in place, but accidents happen. When you're dealing with millions of barrels of oil on the ocean, the risk is always there. There's also the question of whether this pipeline fits with the kind of future we want for our grandchildren. Do we want to be expanding oil production when the world is trying to move toward cleaner energy? What will the world look like in 20 to 30 years if we keep going in this direction?